God of us all, I pray that the words of my mouth, that the thoughts and the meditations of all of our hearts are acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, once more, today's lectionary combines two different stories. In the first one, Jesus is rejected, but he's not rejected by strangers. No, the strangers embrace him. The strangers press in on him so much that he can hardly breathe. The strangers can't get enough of him. It's his hometown folk that rejects him. And usually, the scriptures say the crowds are amazed at Jesus. They're amazed at his teachings. They're amazed at his works. They're amazed at his deeds. But this time, it's Jesus who is amazed. He's amazed at their unbelief. Jesus is in his hometown synagogue teaching on the Sabbath. And at first, they are astounded at his words. Oh, good sermon, preacher. They like that. Good job. And then the tenor of the room begins to change. Some say, hey, wait a minute. Isn't that Jesus? Jesus. Yeah, isn't that Mary's son? Mary's son. Joseph is out of the picture. Well, actually, this is Mark's gospel. Joseph was never in the picture. There is no birth story in Mark. Mary's husband is not named. Is that Mary's son? Is that a derogatory statement to a fatherless boy in a patriarchal culture? And aren't those his brothers and sisters? And then they call them by name. They know this family. They know their names. They can tell their stories. Isn't he a carpenter? Who does he think he is, claiming all this wisdom stuff? The text says they take offense at him. They are offended. They're scandalized. How dare he present himself as someone who knows something about Yahweh, God? They say he's just one of us. He's no one special. And because they don't believe it's possible, he cannot show God's power, because healing comes to those who have faith in the gospel. And then the second story shows that Jesus is rejected, and after Jesus is rejected by those who know him well, he sends out his disciples. He commissioned them to go out 2 by 2, but he tells them not to take anything with them. No purse, no money, no bag, no spare tunic, no bread, no credit cards, no AAA. They are vulnerable. They are exposed. And he tells them they will be rejected too. And when they're rejected, don't dwell on it. Don't respond with revenge or with anger. Shake it off. Shake the dust off your feet and go on. 2 stories. Where do you place yourself in the stories? It's always a good question. When you hear of a local boy doing good, how do you respond? Nebraska nice or Nebraska nasty? Tell the truth, you're in church. When your classmate, a good friend, a small class, you knew everybody's doing just fine, but when one excels and is doing great, are you proud for him or envious of him. Your neighbor, suddenly everybody thinks he is who's who and somebody, and you go, Joe? Nah, he takes the trash out like the rest of us. He's no one special. People from Jesus' hometown see him just like they've always seen him, just like they expect to see him, like they knew him all his life. It can be so hard to see someone in a new way, especially in a new light of power and affirmation and respect and acclaim. Yeah, First Church Nazareth can't see Jesus as any more than that blue-collar worker who makes their tables and chairs. He's a big brother. He's not a divine prophet. He's not anybody special, just an ordinary guy. And that's where they miss the mark. Mark has been telling stories of Jesus, stories about bread and loaves, and stories about fish and mustard seeds and a widow's mite and boats, bread and wine. Stories about ordinary things. Jesus doesn't stand outside of the ordinary. He speaks to the people and shows God's divine grace from within the ordinary. Divine love pouring forth through common elements. But the people who know him are limited by what they see in him, by what they've always expected from him, what they've always seen in him or thought he was. Ever been there, done that? I've been on both sides of that table, and I suspect most of us have too. In the United Methodist Church, the process towards ordination begins in the local church. It begins with that committee that is charged with the personnel issues of the church, and they interview the person and decide to recommend them to the larger church council, and the church council interviews the person and recommends them to the district, and the district board of ordained ministry recommends them to the conference board of ordained ministry to make the final determination. And it takes years and years. But it starts with a dozen people in the local church. And it's a good process. It makes sense because the local church should know you the best. The people that you've lived and worked among and served with should know if you're dependable and stable and responsible and grounded and have a compassionate heart and a heart for people. So if you entering into the ministry, you're first assessed by those who know you best, which seems right. Except Jesus would not have passed his interview and received the recommendation for ministry from his local church. No. Jesus? Nah. He's just a carpenter. Jesus? No. He doesn't even have a dad. Jesus? I've heard he has a temper, turning over tables and stuff. And he doesn't even follow all of the laws. He breaks Sabbath. You know that, don't you? They denied him. They rejected him. Yeah, I've been there. I was part of my local United Methodist Church for a decade. I taught children and adult Sunday school classes. I served on administrative committees. I washed dishes. I baked for the bake sales and the potlucks and decorated. And I wrestled with the call to ministry before I could even say it out loud to myself. And once I could, I had to say it out loud to them. And they kind of acted like the people at Nazareth. Who? Jane? Wasn't she an English teacher at the high school? Didn't she kind of challenged that new pastor last year when he didn't understand that thing about the school system that was going on. Didn't her husband leave her? Who does she think she is, going to seminary anyway, becoming a preacher? Nope, not happening. They did not recommend me for ministry at church council that night. And Jesus responded to rejection much better than I did. He was amazed at their unbelief. Let's see, I was devastated, I was angry, I was embarrassed, I was angry, I was heartbroken, I was angry, I was rejected, I was angry. Maybe you've been there too. Rejected or denied or dismissed when you were trying to do something you felt you were supposed to do. Rejected or denied or dismissed when you were trying to do more in your career or more in your ministry, and your heart broke when they said no. But I have also sat on the other side of that table. I have sat with folks coming before boards for ordination at the local level and at the conference level. And I have questioned some candidates' abilities to serve and whether or not they were ready for ministry or safe for the local church. And I've graded papers and assessed performance and denied advancement at times. The truth is, sometimes we get rejected, and sometimes we reject others. And sometimes it's warranted, and sometimes it's not. The truth is, we can't change what happens. We only can change how we respond. And it's not easy. Jesus teaches his disciples to expect rejection. He was rejected. Expect rejection even if you're trying to do right, even if you're trying to serve God and serve others. Not everyone is going to be supportive or receptive of your efforts wherever they are, and that's hard. And Mark says, don't let that stop you, and don't let that arm you and make you defensive, and don't throw a pity party when it happens, because it will. The story says, shake it off. Shake it off. Keep moving on the path where God has called you. Keep listening for the wisdom and the Spirit, and go. Here is Mark telling another story of faith. Another story reiterating the words that he said before. Maybe this is the wave that threatens to swamp your boat. You're trying to invite people to church. You're trying to grow your ministry. You're trying to extend God's love to all, only to be met with frowns and rejections and words of discouragement and scoffing and unbelief and skepticism. And Mark says, have faith. You'll get through it. If it's of God, God will bring it to fruition. Mark also tells us a bit about the power of hostility. Jesus can do mighty works of power before this. All the stories leading up to this, Jesus has healed a paralytic. He healed a man with a withered hand. He's performed exorcism. He's driven out evil spirits. He spoke calm to the sea. Last week, Jed told us he even raised a girl from the dead. Jesus has displayed great healing, life-saving powers. But when his hometown family direct all their negativity, all their anger, all their jealousy, all their offense at him, the text says he could do no deeds of power there. Mark reminds us of the power of our thoughts and our words and our attitudes. The crowd was sending Jesus all their negative energy, all of their jealousy and dismissal and disbelief, and it stuck. Their energy towards Jesus, the thoughts and the words that they projected upon him, limited his ability to bring about good. The resentment of his friends and his family interfered with his connection to the divine. He could do no deeds of power there. What power we hold to send positive love, kindness, respect, goodness to other people, and the power to send negative, judgment, destructive energy as well. We can send powers to uplift one another. We can speak in kindness of one another. We can build one another up, as the Apostle Paul said. And we can send thoughts and powers to tear one another down, to destroy, to defeat, and to harm. Are we sending life-giving words into the world, or are we joining death-dealing powers? Finally, the story is also a story about witness. Jesus sent them out, vulnerable, without a backup. Out you go. Out you go. And the story ends with the disciples, and it says, so they went out and proclaimed that all should return to the love of God and live in love. And it says their efforts were met with the healing of many and the wholeness of many. Out you go. Out we go. Out we go to share God's love with all. Out we go to challenge injustice. Out we go to speak love to power. Out we go to denounce evil, injustice, and oppression. We can't know how others will receive us, and we aren't responsible for their response. We're responsible for our witness, our faithfulness, our own passion to tell others about the grace of God that has worked in our lives, our own joy to share about the serving that we can do with one another and the growth that we achieve with one another through this community of faith. Out we go, for we are commissioned to share and to press on in the ministry of all believers, to shake it off when others belittle us or denounce our voice, and to see ripples of God's love flowing out from us to a world in so much need of healing. Out we go. May it be so.